She had always loved music. Ever since she was a little girl, she would sit quietly in the corner of the living room while her parents played songs on an old radio. The music felt like a friend, comforting and powerful at the same time. Every note seemed to tell a story, and she imagined herself telling stories in the same way one day. But there was one thing she wanted more than anything else: to have her own piano. Not just any piano, but one she could call hers, one she could build with her own hands. She had dreamed of this for years, even though most people around her thought it was impossible. Her house was small and simple, tucked into a quiet street where children played and neighbors greeted each other warmly. Money was never abundant, and luxuries like musical instruments were considered unnecessary. Yet, she spent hours sketching her ideas on paper, drawing the shape of the piano, imagining the sound it would make, and figuring out how to assemble it piece by piece. Each sketch brought her closer to the dream, and even when the lines were crooked and the details unclear, she felt hope. Every day, she visited second-hand shops and markets, searching for materials she could use. She collected old wooden boards, metal strings, and small tools wherever she could find them. Each piece reminded her of the possibility that her dream could come true. Sometimes, people would stop and ask her why she carried heavy wood or why she looked at metal wires with such curiosity. Most would shake their heads and walk away, but she never let their doubts stop her. She believed that if she tried hard enough, she could make something extraordinary from ordinary things. She didn't have anyone to teach her how to build a piano, but she had a heart full of determination. She read old books about musical instruments, watched videos on how pianos were made, and learned from every mistake. Some days, she would sit for hours just trying to tune a string or figure out how to make a key move smoothly. Her fingers often ached, and her eyes would sting from concentration, but she loved every minute of it. Each small step felt like a victory. At school, her classmates would often talk about simple things, but she would quietly daydream about her piano. She imagined it in a big hall, surrounded by people listening to music that she had brought to life. Sometimes, she would play imaginary notes on a pretend keyboard, letting the music flow through her hands and into her heart. She didn't tell many people about her plan because she was afraid of being laughed at. But deep down, she knew she couldn't give up on something that meant so much to her. Her parents noticed her fascination and dedication. They didn't understand all the technical details, but they saw the spark in her eyes and the seriousness with which she approached her dream. They would often encourage her, saying that passion and hard work could take her far. Still, they worried about the obstacles she would face. Pianos were expensive, complicated, and building one from scratch was something almost no one tried. But she would smile and say she had time and patience, and that was all she needed. In her tiny room, she created a small workshop. Old wood shavings were scattered across the floor, and tools hung from the walls. There were sketches and notes everywhere showing the evolution of her idea. She sometimes stayed up late at night, working by the light of a single lamp, listening to music as she adjusted a string or polished a wooden piece. The room smelled of wood and metal, but it felt like a place of magic to her. It was the beginning of something beautiful, even if it was still incomplete. Neighbors often noticed her determination. They would see her carrying boards and tools down the street or hear the sound of hammering and sanding. Some were curious and would ask her what she was doing, but most would simply smile and walk on. She didn't need anyone else's approval. The piano she imagined existed in her mind, and she could almost hear the sound it would make. That sound kept her going through every hard day, every challenge, and every moment of doubt. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, she sat on the floor of her room surrounded by the materials she had collected. She looked at the sketches she had made over the years and realized how far she had come. The dream was no longer just a thought in her head. It was slowly becoming real. Her heart swelled with pride, but there was also fear. What if she couldn't finish it? What if the piano didn't sound right? What if all her effort was in vain? She took a deep breath and reminded herself of why she started. This piano wasn't just a musical instrument. It was a symbol of her dreams, her determination, and her willingness to create something from nothing. The challenges were many, but they were part of the journey. Every mistake she made was a lesson, and every small success was a step closer to her goal. She realized that giving up was never an option. Her room became a sanctuary of hope and hard work. She would often lose herself in the process, forgetting about time and the outside world. Every piece of wood she sanded, every string she tightened, every key she tested brought her closer to the moment when she could finally hear music come alive from her own creation. The dream that once seemed impossible was slowly taking shape in the quiet, determined hands of a young woman who refused to let anything stop her. And so, she continued, day after day, fueled by passion, patience, and belief. The journey was just beginning, and though she had many obstacles to face, she knew that her heart and hands were ready. The piano was no longer just a dream. It was becoming her reality, one careful step at a time. The world might not have understood her yet, but she was certain that one day, everyone would hear the music she had imagined for so long. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, but she never slowed down. Every morning, she would wake up early, energized by the thought of what she could achieve that day. Her small workshop was alive with activity. Saws cutting wood, hammers tapping, and her hands moving skillfully over strings and keys. Each day, she learned something new, discovered a better way to fix a problem, or found a tool that made her work easier. The piano was slowly coming together, and with each step, her confidence grew. There were hard days too. Sometimes, after hours of sanding and assembling, a key would stick or a string would snap. At times, she felt frustrated, angry at herself for not getting it right, but she never gave up. She would take a deep breath, step back, and examine the problem carefully. Then, she would try again, testing different ideas until it worked. Her persistence became her strength. She understood that building something valuable was never easy, and mistakes were part of the journey. Every time she fixed a problem, she felt a small victory and knew she was moving closer to her dream. Money remained a challenge. She had to find ways to earn small amounts to buy the materials she needed. She picked up odd jobs, helping neighbors with cleaning, running errands, or tutoring children in basic music lessons. Though the work was tiring, she never complained. She understood that each coin she earned brought her closer to completing her piano. She learned the value of patience and careful planning. Nothing came quickly, but everything she did mattered for her goal. Her curiosity and determination inspired others around her. A few neighbors who once doubted her started offering small help. Someone gave her an old box of piano strings. Another gave a piece of what he thought was useless. Even strangers were curious when they saw her working tirelessly every day. Sometimes people would stop to watch her hammer or test a key, and she would smile and explain what she was doing. Slowly, she started to feel that her dream was not just hers. It had become a story that touched those around her. At night, when the work was done, she would sit in her room, reflecting on the progress she had made. She would look at the nearly finished piano, imagining how it would sound when completed. She had become skilled at listening to sounds, adjusting the strings to get the right tone, and carefully tuning every key. The piano was beginning to speak to her, not in words, but in melodies that filled her mind with music. She felt a deep connection to it, as if it had a soul of its own waiting to be awakened. Her family noticed the change in her. She was more confident, more patient, and more focused than ever. Even when they could not fully understand what she was building, they saw the joy it brought her. Her parents encouraged her with small words of support, praising her effort and dedication. They watched her work late into the night, helping with small tasks when needed, and felt proud that she had found something that made her heart so full. There were moments when she questioned herself. Some nights, she would lie awake thinking about the difficulties ahead. What if the piano never sounded good? What if all her hard work was wasted? But she would shake her head and remind herself why she started. Her dream was bigger than fear. She understood that courage was not the absence of doubt but the determination to keep going despite it. She learned to embrace the struggle as part of the journey and not something to be feared. As the piano started to take shape, she began experimenting with its sound. She would pluck strings, tap keys, and listen closely, adjusting tiny details. Sometimes the sound was not right, but she learned to listen with patience. Slowly, the notes began to blend, forming melodies that were soft, clear, and beautiful. The piano was no longer just a collection of wood and strings. It had begun to sing, and every note made her heart swell with pride. Her work drew attention from people who loved music. A local music teacher once saw her testing a key and stopped to watch. She was amazed by the dedication and skill she saw. Without expecting it, the teacher offered guidance on tuning and adjusting the sound. This small help made a big difference, teaching her techniques she had not known before. She welcomed every suggestion, learning eagerly, and applying the new knowledge with care. Her piano was evolving, growing closer to the instrument she had dreamed of for years. Every obstacle became a lesson. When a wooden panel cracked, she learned how to repair it. When a string snapped, she discovered how to make it stronger. When a key stuck, she experimented with different oils and adjustments until it moved smoothly. Each challenge was frustrating in the moment, but looking back, she realized they had taught her patience, creativity, and resilience. She understood that the journey was as important as the goal itself. Her community started noticing her dedication more. Children would sometimes peek into her workshop, fascinated by the process. Some neighbors would offer advice, small tools, or leftover materials. Even those who were skeptical at first began to admire her perseverance. She did not let their attention distract her. Instead, it motivated her to work harder. Every small gesture of encouragement felt like a step forward, and she realized that dreams could inspire others even before they were completed. Despite the long hours, she found joy in the process. She enjoyed the smell of fresh wood, the sound of tapping hammers, and the feeling of smoothing rough edges with her hands. Each moment of work was a conversation with her dream, a way to connect her imagination with reality. She learned to enjoy both the struggles and the successes, understanding that both were essential for growth. Her patience and love for her work gave her energy even on the toughest days. One day, after many weeks of careful effort, she managed to complete the main frame of the piano. It stood tall in her small workshop, unfinished in detail but sturdy and strong. She ran her fingers along the surface, feeling the smoothness of the wood and imagining the music it would produce. Her heart raced with excitement, and she knew that the hardest part of the work had passed. There were still adjustments to make, strings to tighten, keys to align, and sounds to refine, but the piano had a presence, a life of its own waiting to awaken. Her parents watched her with awe. They had never imagined that she could accomplish so much with such limited resources. They saw her not just as a dreamer, but as someone who had turned imagination into reality through hard work and persistence. Their pride in her accomplishment filled the house with warmth, reinforcing her belief that she was on the right path. The support, even in small ways, gave her courage to continue and perfect the piano. She spent evenings playing imaginary notes on the piano, testing it with her hands, and listening carefully to the sound it produced. She started to feel the soul of the piano, understanding its character, its strengths, and its weaknesses. She realized that every piano had a personality, and hers was beginning to show its own. The sound was gentle yet clear, soft yet strong, and she could almost imagine the emotions it could evoke in people who would one day hear it. She knew that soon the time would come to bring a real pianist to play on it, someone skilled enough to bring out its true potential. But before that moment, she wanted to refine every detail, to make sure the piano could speak perfectly. She stayed focused, working late into the night, losing herself in the rhythm of creation. Each evening ended with a sense of accomplishment, and each morning began with renewed energy. The piano was no longer a dream. It was becoming a reality, piece by piece, note by note. By the end of this stage of her journey, she had learned something more than building a piano. She had learned patience, resilience, and the power of belief. She understood that hard work, love, and attention to detail could turn a dream into reality. Her piano was no longer just an object. It was a symbol of hope, courage, and the reward of persistence. And as she looked at it, standing tall and proud in her small workshop, she knew that this was only the beginning of something truly remarkable. The piano was beginning to look complete, though she knew there were still many small details to perfect. Every morning, she entered her workshop with renewed energy, eager to see what she could achieve in a single day. She polished the wooden surface carefully, aligning every key with precision and checking every string to make sure it was tight and ready. The sound had started to change, becoming warmer, smoother, and richer than she had ever imagined. Each note she tested was a small celebration of how far she had come. Even though the piano was nearly complete, she still faced challenges. Sometimes the sound would not flow as she wanted, and she had to adjust strings multiple times or change the angle of a key. On some days, she would spend hours trying one solution only to find it did not work. At first, she felt frustrated, even tired, but she had learned patience. She reminded herself that every problem solved was a lesson learned, and that perfection came only through persistence. Her dedication never wavered, and slowly, the piano started to respond to her efforts. She decided it was time to prepare for someone to play the piano. In her mind, she imagined a skilled pianist performing, letting the music flow, and seeing the piano come alive. She wanted the first performance to be perfect, to show the true sound she had nurtured for so long. This thought made her both nervous and excited. She knew that the moment of truth was approaching, and she needed to ensure that every detail was flawless. She worked meticulously, testing each note and adjusting each key, imagining the reactions of those who would hear the music for the first time. Her family noticed her dedication and often offered support. They helped by carrying materials, handing her tools, or simply being present to encourage her. They did not fully understand all the technical details, but they felt the love and determination she put into every action. Their support was quiet but powerful. It reminded her that she was not alone in her journey, and that others valued her effort and vision. She felt stronger knowing that her work had inspired care and pride in the people around her. She began to practice with the piano herself, testing melodies she had once only imagined. Her fingers glided over the keys, and the sound was better than she had hoped. The piano responded to every touch, and each note seemed to carry emotion, warmth, and beauty. She smiled to herself, realizing that her dream was no longer just an idea. It was real, tangible, and alive. The music she had imagined for years now existed in her hands, waiting to reach the ears of others. The thought of inviting someone to play it filled her with excitement and anxiety. She wanted the right person, someone whose skills could bring out the best in the piano. She thought about musicians she admired and wondered if any would be willing to play on a piano made by someone with so little experience. She realized that, even if it was challenging to find the perfect pianist, the moment would come. She had prepared the piano with care, and the music it could produce would speak for itself. She spent days rehearsing small melodies, adjusting minor details, and listening carefully to the sound. She learned to detect even the slightest variation in tone, the smallest flaw that could affect the harmony. Her workshop became a place of focus, where the air was filled with music, anticipation, and hope. Each time she tested a key, she felt the personality of the piano emerging. It was more than wood and strings. It was a voice, a story waiting to be told. The process of perfecting the piano taught her more than just craftsmanship. She learned to trust herself, to rely on her instincts, and to believe that her hard work would lead to something remarkable. She had spent countless hours alone, experimenting, learning, and growing. Her journey was filled with determination and discipline, but it was also rich with creativity and joy. She realized that the work itself was as meaningful as the final result. One afternoon, she decided to invite a local pianist she had admired for some time. She felt nervous but hopeful, preparing to show the piano in its best form. She cleaned every surface, tuned every string, and polished every key until it shone. She imagined the moment the pianist would sit down, place their fingers on the keys, and bring the music to life. Her heart raced, not out of fear, but anticipation of the moment when all her efforts would be revealed through sound. The pianist arrived quietly, curious, and polite. She led them into the workshop and explained how she had built the piano piece by piece, sharing a little about the journey without exaggeration. The musician looked at the piano with interest, appreciating the craftsmanship and attention to detail. She watched as they placed their fingers on the keys, waiting to hear the first notes. She held her breath, hoping the piano would respond the way she had imagined for years. The first note sounded, soft and clear, filling the room with a warm resonance. Her heart lifted, and she could feel a wave of relief and joy. The pianist smiled, testing a few chords, and the sound was rich and harmonious. Every adjustment she had made, every long hour of work, every setback she had overcome, all of it was worth it. She could see that the piano was more than functional. It was expressive, capable of conveying emotion, and able to move anyone who listened. As the pianist continued, she noticed a change in the room. The music flowed, filling the space with beauty and emotion. It was as if the piano had been waiting for this moment, for someone to unlock its potential. She listened carefully, feeling every note resonate through her. Her dream had become reality, and the music was proof that dedication, patience, and belief could create something extraordinary. She was filled with a deep sense of accomplishment and pride. The pianist tried different melodies, each one more complex than the last, and the piano responded beautifully. It was clear that the effort she had put in over months had created an instrument capable of amazing sound. The room was silent except for the music, and every note was a confirmation of her skill and vision. She realized that this moment, this first true performance, was more than she had ever imagined. The piano had not just met her expectations, it had surpassed them. She began to understand the true power of her dream. Building the piano had taught her patience, perseverance, and the value of hard work, but hearing it played was a new kind of lesson. It showed her that dreams could touch others, that effort could create beauty, and that the music she had nurtured in her imagination could exist in reality. It was a moment of revelation, a proof that imagination and action could create wonders. As the performance continued, she felt a wave of gratitude. Gratitude for the guidance she had received, for the support of her family, and for her own courage to keep going despite challenges. She understood that the piano was not just hers. It was a product of love, determination, and learning. Every note carried the story of her journey, from early sketches to the final sound. It was a living testament to what was possible when someone refused to give up on their dreams. After the pianist finished, the room was silent for a moment. She felt the weight of accomplishment settle in, a mix of pride, relief, and wonder. She realized that the piano had a life of its own now, ready to inspire others as it had inspired her. The musician smiled and thanked her for the opportunity, impressed by both the sound and the dedication behind the instrument. Her dream had come alive, not only in her hands but through the music that now filled the space. She knew this was only the beginning. There were still small adjustments to make, improvements to refine, and more music to explore. But she also knew that the journey had already brought her invaluable lessons, unforgettable experiences, and a deep understanding of her own potential. The piano was no longer just a dream. It was a reality, ready to be shared with the world, and she was ready to see where this new chapter of her life would take her. The day of the real performance arrived, and she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had spent months preparing the piano, perfecting every detail, and now it was time to see how it would sound in front of an audience. Her small workshop was filled with people she knew and a few strangers who had heard about her story. They were curious, some skeptical, but all eager to see what this young woman had created. She stood quietly, taking deep breaths, as the pianist took their place at the piano. The first note echoed through the room. It was clear, warm, and full of emotion. She held her breath, listening as the sound traveled across the space. She could feel it vibrating through the floor, the walls, and her own body. Every person in the room seemed captivated, their attention fully on the piano and the music flowing from it. The moment was more magical than she had imagined, and she felt a wave of relief and pride wash over her. All the hard work, all the sleepless nights, all the struggles, they were worth it. The pianist continued, playing melody after melody. Each note was perfect, yet full of life, as if the piano itself was telling a story. Some of the audience leaned forward, their eyes wide with surprise. Others had tears in their eyes, moved by the beauty of the sound. She watched silently, feeling a mix of joy and disbelief. She had never expected such a reaction. The piano she had built with her own hands was capable of touching people's hearts, and she realized that this moment would stay with her forever. People began to whisper to each other, sharing their amazement. Many had never seen a handmade piano before, and they were shocked by the quality of the sound. Some of the older musicians in the room shook their heads in disbelief, impressed by what she had accomplished. They had assumed that a piano built outside a professional workshop could not possibly produce such harmony. Yet here it was, filling the room with music that rivaled even the finest instruments. The young woman watched quietly, her heart full of pride, as the piano proved itself beyond doubt. She remembered the long months of work, the countless mistakes, the strings that had snapped, the keys that had stuck. Every small challenge had led to this moment, and the feeling of accomplishment was overwhelming. She realized that the piano had not just been a project, it had been a teacher. It had taught her patience, persistence, and the power of believing in oneself. It had shown her that dreams, no matter how difficult, could be achieved through dedication and hard work. And now, the piano was speaking for her, telling her story without words, through music. The pianist played a complex piece, and the piano responded beautifully. The notes flowed seamlessly, creating a melody that was rich, clear, and expressive. Some members of the audience closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others leaned closer, listening intently to the subtle variations in tone. The young woman could see the effect her piano had on people, and it filled her with a deep sense of fulfillment. She understood that her work had the power to inspire, to move, and to create moments of pure emotion. After the performance, the room erupted into applause. The young woman felt her cheeks warm with happiness. She had imagined this moment for years, but the reality was even more extraordinary. People came forward to congratulate her, praising her skill, dedication, and the incredible sound of the piano. Some asked how she had managed to build it alone, expressing disbelief and admiration. She smiled, grateful for their words, but she also knew that the true reward was in the music itself, in the emotions it had evoked, and in the proof that her dream had become real. One person in the audience, an experienced musician, approached her with curiosity. They asked about her process, how she had learned to tune the piano, and how she had managed to create such a beautiful sound. She explained patiently, sharing her journey, the hours of study, practice, and experimentation. The musician listened carefully, impressed by her dedication and ingenuity. They praised her not only for the piano itself but also for the determination and courage it took to follow such a challenging dream. She reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She remembered sitting in her room, sketching ideas on paper, collecting old wood and strings, and working late into the night. She remembered the frustration of mistakes and the joy of small victories. Every step had been a part of this moment, and now she could see the results. Her dream had grown beyond her imagination, touching others and creating a shared experience of wonder and admiration. The audience lingered, some taking turns to play a few notes, while others simply listened. Each person discovered the personality of the piano, the way it responded to touch, the warmth of its sound, and the depth of its tones. The young woman watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of pride and satisfaction. She realized that the piano was no longer just a reflection of her efforts. It had become something greater, capable of inspiring others and creating memories that would last a lifetime. In the following days, word about the piano spread. People from other neighborhoods, musicians, and curious listeners came to hear the instrument she had built. Each new performance reaffirmed what she had learned, that dedication, patience, and belief could turn a dream into reality. She continued to refine the piano, adjusting small details to enhance its sound, always learning, always improving. The journey was ongoing, but the foundation of success had been established through her unwavering commitment and love for music. she also noticed a change in herself. The experience of hearing the piano played, of seeing people's reactions, had given her confidence and self-belief. She no longer doubted her abilities or her decisions. She understood that challenges were opportunities to grow, and that perseverance could overcome even the most difficult obstacles. The piano had taught her more than technical skills. It had taught her about courage, resilience, and the beauty of creating something meaningful from nothing. Her family continued to support her, proud of what she had achieved. They often helped with small tasks, carried materials for adjustments, or simply encouraged her with kind words. Their support, combined with her determination, had made this achievement possible. She realized that dreams were not achieved in isolation. They were nurtured by effort, love, and guidance from those who believed in us. The piano was a symbol not only of her dedication but also of the support that had made her journey possible. She knew that more challenges would come, but she welcomed them with confidence. The success of the performance had shown her what was possible, and she was ready to continue learning and improving. She began to imagine new compositions, new melodies, and the possibility of sharing her music with even more people. The piano was not just a finished project. It was a living instrument, a tool for creativity, and a symbol of hope and perseverance. The young woman also felt a sense of responsibility. She wanted to inspire others, to show that dreams could be realized through hard work and determination. She began to teach younger children who were curious about music and instruments, sharing her knowledge and experience. Her story became a source of encouragement, a reminder that passion and persistence could overcome obstacles and create extraordinary results. She understood that her journey had meaning beyond her own achievement. It could inspire others to follow their dreams as well. Every evening, after the visitors left, she would sit at the piano alone, playing softly for herself. The music had become a companion, a friend that reflected her feelings and thoughts. She experimented with new melodies, testing the range and depth of the piano, discovering nuances in sound she had never noticed before. These quiet moments became her favorite part of the day, a time for reflection, creativity, and connection with the instrument she had built and nurtured with her own hands. The piano had transformed not only her life but also the lives of those around her. People came to listen, to learn, and to be inspired. She realized that the true reward of her hard work was not just the sound of the piano but the emotions it evoked, the memories it created, and the joy it brought to others. Her dream had started as a personal ambition, but it had grown into something that could touch hearts and inspire minds. As she looked at the piano, shining under the light, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and challenging, but the result was more beautiful than she had ever imagined. She understood that dreams required patience, dedication, and belief, and that the effort invested in pursuing them was as meaningful as the achievement itself. The piano had become a testament to her journey, a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of following one's passion. And as the music played on, she knew that this was only the beginning of many more stories and melodies to come. The days following the performance were filled with excitement and new opportunities. People who had heard the piano spread the word to others, and soon she found herself invited to show her instrument in different places. Musicians and enthusiasts wanted to hear her piano, learn about her journey, and experience the music she had created. She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness, knowing that each new audience would have expectations, but also hope, because her piano had already proven its power to move people. She carefully prepared for each new presentation. Even though the piano was complete, she refined small details, adjusting keys and strings to ensure the sound remained perfect. Each performance brought subtle insights, teaching her how to enhance the resonance, smooth the keys, and improve the overall experience. She learned that mastery required constant attention, care, and a willingness to keep improving. Her dedication to excellence became even stronger as she witnessed the joy and amazement in the faces of those who listened. People began to ask about her story, the challenges she faced, the mistakes she made, and the hours of work that led to this moment. She shared openly, emphasizing persistence, patience, and belief in oneself. Her honesty and humility inspired many, showing that even a dream that seems impossible can be achieved with dedication. The more she shared, the more people connected with her journey, finding hope and courage in her words. Her piano had become a symbol not just of music but of determination, creativity, and the human spirit. As her reputation grew, she realized the piano had opened doors she had never imagined. Some musicians asked if she could build more instruments, while others requested lessons on tuning and crafting. She welcomed every opportunity, knowing that her skill could now help others and share her passion for music. She also began mentoring young students, teaching them not only about instruments but also about persistence and creativity. The piano had become a bridge, connecting her to a community of learners and music lovers, and giving her a sense of purpose beyond her own achievement. Despite the growing recognition, she remained humble. She continued to practice and refine her craft, understanding that true mastery was a lifelong journey. She experimented with new sounds, tested different melodies, and explored ways to enhance the piano's voice. Each day brought a new lesson, a new discovery, and a deeper appreciation for the complexity and beauty of music. She realized that her dream had grown beyond a single piano. It had become a lifelong pursuit of creativity, learning, and expression. Her family remained her quiet supporters, proud of how far she had come. They had watched her transform from a dreamer into a skilled artisan and musician, witnessing her dedication, patience, and resilience. Their encouragement continued to fuel her, reminding her that she was not alone on this journey. She cherished their presence, knowing that their belief in her had been a steady force behind her success. Together, they celebrated each new achievement, understanding that her story was also a shared journey of love, support, and pride. She reflected often on how far she had come. From the early days of sketches and small wooden pieces to the creation of a fully functioning piano, every step had been filled with learning, struggle, and growth. She remembered the long nights, the frustration of mistakes, and the joy of small victories. Each moment had shaped her into the person she was now, a confident, skilled, and passionate creator. The piano had been the catalyst, but the journey had been as meaningful as the achievement itself. The young woman also realized the importance of sharing her story beyond music. She spoke to community groups, schools, and gatherings about following dreams, working hard, and overcoming obstacles. Her experience became a lesson for others, demonstrating that determination and belief could turn the seemingly impossible into reality. People listened eagerly, inspired by her words and the piano that symbolized her journey. She saw that her impact extended far beyond the music she created, touching lives in ways she had never anticipated. She began composing her own pieces, using the piano she had built. The melodies were personal, reflecting her journey, emotions, and experiences. Each composition was unique, capturing the struggles, joys, and triumphs she had faced. When played, the music seemed to tell her story without words, connecting with listeners on a deep, emotional level. People were moved, often remarking that the music felt alive, heartfelt, and authentic. She realized that her dream had not only created an instrument, but had also given her a voice to express herself and inspire others. The piano became a companion in her everyday life. She played during quiet mornings, late nights, and moments of reflection. It was a source of comfort, creativity, and expression. Each note reminded her of the journey she had undertaken, the lessons she had learned, and the dreams she had fulfilled. The instrument was more than wood and strings. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and the power of dedication. Her connection with it deepened with every day, reinforcing the meaning of her achievement. She also recognized the importance of community. People who had supported her early on, neighbors who offered advice, materials, or encouragement, were part of her success. She made sure to include them in her celebrations, acknowledging their small but meaningful contributions. She understood that even dreams pursued alone are shaped by the people who support, encourage, and inspire us along the way. Gratitude became a central part of her life, and she found joy in giving back to those who had believed in her. Over time, She received invitations to participate in music festivals and exhibitions. Each event was an opportunity to showcase her piano, connect with other musicians, and learn new techniques. She traveled to different places, sharing her creation and her story, inspiring countless people with the message that dreams were achievable through hard work and passion. Every performance and interaction reinforced her belief in the power of perseverance and creativity, and she felt grateful for the experiences that expanded her horizons. Through all these achievements, she remained focused on the essence of her dream. The piano had been the initial goal, but the journey had become so much more. She had discovered the joy of creating, the importance of persistence, and the impact of sharing one's passion with the world. She had grown not only as a craftsman and musician, but also as a person who understood the value of determination, humility, and inspiration. The journey had transformed her in ways she had never imagined when she first started. Years passed, and the piano continued to bring joy, music, and inspiration to all who experienced it. She kept refining her skills, building new instruments, and composing original pieces. The story of her first piano remained a pivotal memory, a reminder of what could be achieved through effort, patience, and belief. She often reflected on the lessons learned, that dreams were possible, challenges were opportunities, and dedication could create something extraordinary. Every note she played was a celebration of the journey, the struggles, and the triumphs. In her heart, she knew that the piano had changed not only her life but also the lives of those who had heard it. It had become a symbol of hope, courage, and perseverance. People remembered the day they first heard the piano, the sound that had surprised and moved them, and the story of the young woman who had built it with her own hands. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a living testament to the power of dreams, creativity, and determination. As she sat at her piano, playing softly for herself in the quiet of the evening, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and sometimes difficult, but the result was beyond anything she had imagined. She had achieved her dream, touched lives, and discovered her own strength. And as the music filled the room, she smiled, knowing that this was not the end, but the beginning of many more stories, melodies, and dreams to follow.